Today is Wednesday, October 19th. We'll tell you about winter coming early for millions of Americans, where cold temperatures are setting records. Also, what the president is expected to announce today in his efforts to lower gas prices, and what leaders of both political parties say they'll do if they win control of Congress after the midterms. Plus, the IRS just made a big adjustment for next year's tax rules. Apple revealed its newest iPads, and what Google says will be the most popular Halloween costume this year. Those stories and more news you need to know today. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. A blast of cold weather is sending temperatures plummeting for millions of people across the United States. Things could get low enough to break records for 60 million people. Even more Americans are under freeze watches and warnings, stretching as far south as Florida and as far west as Colorado. In Georgia, normal October temperatures are around the 60s. Now they're dropping well below freezing. Other places are experiencing temperatures 30 degrees colder than average. Parts of the Midwest, like Wisconsin and Michigan, are being buried by 1.5 feet of snow. The early cold caught some people by surprise, and the temperatures are not expected to warm up until Friday and this weekend. But what's also interesting about this cold wave are the places that are not affected. In Seattle, for example, they hit a record high temperature of 88 degrees. Other western states and even up in Canada are also unusually warm. Weather experts say the jet stream is sending a curved blast of cold air to the south and east of the U.S. while missing the west. In fact, the hot temperatures in Washington state likely helped a wildfire quickly grow to a dangerous size. Close to 40,000 people were under evacuation orders near the border with Oregon as the fire rapidly spread. It actually began over a week ago, and now authorities are looking for a few persons of interest for causing it. So far, no one has been hurt and no homes have actually been lost, but the fire is still a major threat to thousands. Firefighters could be getting some relief, though. Rain is in the weekend forecast. That could help crews get the fire under control. The largest ever release of oil from the nation's strategic reserves is about to be complete. President Biden is expected to announce today that he'll release the final 15 million barrels of oil from the U.S. reserves through December. And that'll mark the last batch of the record release Biden announced earlier this year. Various reports cite sources who say Biden is not ruling out releasing even more oil from the reserves later if energy prices spike again. Remember, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is essentially America's stockpile of oil meant for emergencies. In this case, it was in response to rising oil and gas prices linked to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On top of that, OPEC+, a group of oil-producing nations, announced cuts to oil production this month, making matters worse. Tapping the reserves is one of the few things Biden can do right now to try to lower gas prices as well as inflation ahead of the midterm elections next month. Although whether it actually helps depends on who you ask. And critics say either way, it's risky. Using up the reserves too much can leave the country vulnerable in a more severe crisis, like a cyber attack, hurricane, or other problem impacting our access to oil. In fact, the strategic reserves now have the lowest amount of oil in 40 years. Still, the White House has said there's enough there. Russian attacks on Ukraine have reportedly cut off water and power to 30% of the entire country. Millions of Ukrainians are now living in the dark. For more than a week, Russian missiles and explosive drones have hammered power plants and energy across the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia stepped up attacks on their infrastructure because of their struggles on the battlefield. With cold winter weather coming, emergency workers in Ukraine are rushing to repair the damaged power stations. But with the attacks continuing, Ukrainian leaders are telling their people to be prepared for tough times ahead. With the midterm elections here in the U.S. just a few weeks out and early voting already underway, both Republicans and Democrats are laying out some priorities. For example, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said this week, if Republicans take control of Congress, they will not write a blank check for Ukraine. The U.S. has pledged more than $60 billion to Ukraine as the country continues to defend itself against the Russian invasion. McCarthy says, quote, Ukraine is important, but at the same time, it can't be the only thing we do, and it can't be a blank check. His statement reflects the America First motto of former President Trump and some other Republicans. McCarthy is in line to become the next Speaker of the House if Republicans get back the majority. Meanwhile, President Biden announced the very first bill he would send to Congress if Democrats hold on to the majority. It would be to restore Roe v. Wade and protect a woman's right to an abortion in the U.S. Abortion issues gave Democrats a lot of momentum over the summer. But some recent polls show that momentum may be fading, which may be why Biden is bringing it back up. Of course, it's too soon to know whether Democrats or Republicans will come out on top in the midterm elections, but one thing is clear: early voting has been extremely popular. On the very first day of early voting in the battleground state of Georgia, the state shattered records. On day one, the number of voters was almost double that of the first day in 2018. All right, we have much more news still coming up, but first, let's take a quick break for our sponsor. When you need a new hire, it often feels like you have to find them ASAP. So for top talent fast, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Plus, Indeed has a suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. So instead of making your candidates jump through hoops, Indeed's virtual interview tool means there's nothing to download. You just click and talk. You can message, schedule, and interview top talent all in one place. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applications from resumes in the database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/newsworthy to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/newsworthy. Indeed.com/newsworthy. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. The IRS is adjusting its rules to account for inflation, which could mean a lower tax bill for some Americans. The IRS actually adjusts tax brackets every year. It's to make sure people don't get put into a higher tax bracket where they'll owe more in taxes every time they get a salary increase that was meant to keep up with inflation. But this year, the changes are more significant because of extra high inflation, aka the rising cost of food, energy, and other everyday items. So the IRS is updating next year's income limits, increasing them by 7%. So that could mean you'll be taxed less. For example, if you're earning $90,000 this year, your top tax rate was 32%. But next year, it'll be 24%. The standard deduction will also be adjusted. That's used by people who don't itemize their taxes, and it brings down the amount of income they have to pay taxes on. But again, this all starts in 2023, which means you'll be filing these tax returns in 2024. For the first time, an Asian American will be featured on U.S. currency. Anna May Wong, who many consider to be the first Chinese-American film star, will be on a new version of the quarter. It's the fifth coin to be released as part of the U.S. Mint's American Women Quarters program, first announced early this year. It features women who have contributed in fields like science, the arts, government, and civil rights. In 1919, Wong was cast in her first role at just 14 as an extra. She ended up working on more than 60 films, including one of the first made in Technicolor. She was also the first Asian American to be cast as the lead on the small screen. Wong, who died in the early 60s, will be pictured on the back of the quarter. It's set to be released next week. 5 new coins will be released each year through 2025. Things are looking up for Netflix. The streaming service surprised everyone when it posted better than expected numbers for the third quarter, especially when it came to new subscribers. The company had estimated they'd only add about 1 million new subscribers, and instead they added more than 2.4 million. The company's stock, which had been struggling, jumped considerably after the news broke. Netflix now says it believes they'll get to 4.5 million new subscribers in the last few months of this year. And that's a turnaround from how the company had been trending recently. Netflix hopes to keep up the momentum as it's rolling out 2 new strategies: a lower-priced ad-supported subscription option launching next month, and a plan to crack down on password sharing starting next year. Apple already revealed its newest phones and watches this fall. Now the company has revealed some new iPads. There was a major design update to the entry-level iPad that it just calls the iPad. It has a bigger screen, rounded edges, and some updated features, but it's also more expensive than the previous version. Apple also announced new higher-end tablets. The new iPad Pros look the same as last year's models, but have a faster processor, Apple's M2 chip. The company says this will mean download speeds that are twice as fast as the previous generation, and there's a new Apple Pencil that previews what it'll do before it hits the screen. The new iPads hit shelves in a week on October 26th, and an upgrade to the iPad operating system on all recent devices will be coming out next Monday. If you're dressing up for Halloween this year, chances are you or someone you know will be a witch. Google Trends released its 2022 Frightgeist, the list of Halloween's most searched for costumes in the U.S. And for the second year in a row, witch got the top spot. Witch was followed by Spider-Man and dinosaur. Number 4, costumes related to Stranger Things. And speaking of Halloween fun, here's some nostalgia for you. McDonald's Boo Buckets are now back nationwide. It's essentially a Happy Meal served in a Halloween-themed bucket, which can then double as a trick-or-treat pail. It first debuted 26 years ago, and the last time we've seen them was in 2016. Until now. Well, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, this podcast is sponsored by KiwiCo. I love spending more time with family around the holidays. I don't love having to spend time searching for the perfect gift for everyone. And yet, I want to give my loved ones something special. So that's why I love KiwiCo for the kids in my life. It is totally kid-approved. In fact, even before these super cool science, technology, and art projects are shipped around the world, they are tested by a crew of real kid testers to ensure each one is age-appropriate and totally fun. My 1-year-old loves the toys that come in his KiwiCo crate, and I love knowing the materials are high quality and expertly built to help him learn new skills. And for my niece, who is a bit older, she gets projects that wow her, while also teaching her about cool things like how to engineer a domino machine, for example. As a parent, it can be hard to find creative ways to keep our children busy and challenged. KiwiCo makes it easy. Give awesome this holiday with KiwiCo. Get your first month free on any crate line at kiwico.com/newsworthy. That's your first month free at kiwico.com/newsworthy. kiwico.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. So despite all the worries about a recession, the labor market is still pretty hot, and workers still have the upper hand. Recent LinkedIn data found more and more people at all levels are quitting in less than a year after taking a new job. It's being called quick quitting. It's typically something that happens with entry-level jobs, and young workers are still the majority of those leaving quickly. But the pandemic has made more people reassess priorities. So more managers and executives are getting out sooner rather than later, too. Employers, though, are taking notice, and some are now demanding employees actually pay back the cost of their training. Reuters cited a survey that found about 10% of workers have a training repayment agreement. It essentially means you have to pay the company back for the money they spent on training you. It's been happening in healthcare, trucking, and retail industries. The idea of these agreements has been around since the 80s, but it's typically used for high-paying jobs that require a lot of training. However, in the last few years, more companies are doing it. That said, authorities at the federal and state level are now looking into it and whether more should be done to protect workers. Stay tuned. All right, thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine and for supporting us by sharing the show. We'll catch you up on more news tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.